And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin Bible podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode, last one of the week of Talkin Bible. I nearly said Talking Bible. I keep remembering I'm Talkin Bible, not Talking Bible.
Drop the G.
Drop the G. Let's just go street language. Hello, Phil Wearden.
Hi, Rohan. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. We're halfway through our recording, nearly.
Yeah.
By the end of this episode, we'll be halfway through our 10 episodes of recording that we are doing, but we'll get there.
Yep.
In the meantime, we're talking as we head into, next week's heading into Easter week. We're recording this still in March, but yes, we're still in March, aren't we? We're still in March, yes. So a couple of weeks before it comes out. And we're talking about, we were talking about Jesus predicting his betrayal and handing bread to Judas in yesterday's episode. Now Jesus, by this time, has been arrested and been in the garden. He's been through Gethsemane. I think that's coming up. Our conversation of Gethsemane is coming up next week. So they're a little bit out of order. But we're heading into Jesus being arrested. And I should add that, this year is Red Letter Jesus. And so a lot of the focus of the stories that we're focusing on this podcast and in our sermons and our reading plans. Quick pitch here for the Anchor Point app, Anchor Point Church app reading plan. You can go in there, download the app from the App Store, and you can get the reading plan for our daily reading plan in there with all the scriptures we read each day. So you can follow along, and it's in real time, same as the podcast. Yep. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So some of the scriptures that we're looking at over these few weeks around Easter aren't necessarily all about Jesus speaking, because like at his crucifixion, at his trial, he doesn't say a lot.
No.
He keeps it fairly minimal. But I wanted to include these because these are fundamental Easter stories. You can't have the Christmas story without these narratives of trial and
Easter story.
Yeah, you can't have the Easter story without the Easter story. So there's probably less read in some of these passages around these next couple of weeks, but they're still centered on Jesus. And these moments, as I said earlier in the week, these stories are the pivot points. The death and resurrection of Jesus is the pivot of humanity's history. Yeah. So we'd be crazy to avoid them. So anyway, today we're talking about Jesus before the council, and this is actually in all four Gospels, his communication. John's Gospel very likely is slightly different, as it tends to be to the Synoptic Gospels, but let's see where we go. So start us off. Tell us where you'd like to go in the few minutes that we have together today.
Well, this is where Jesus is brought before the council before he's been taken to the Romans to be committed to death, and the Jews were not allowed to kill anybody, so they needed to.
By their law, they were, but not by Roman law.
But not Roman law, which is what they were under.
Yeah.
And so they had to come up a scheme to get him to the Romans.
Yep, and get the Romans to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is quite sort of frightening, sobering, that it's like, well, they were so determined to kill him, even though he just talked. He just sat in the temple and sort of talked and pointed out, yes, you're not doing it quite right.
Yeah.
But to that extreme that they got so angry.
They were so threatened by the power base that he was gathering around him of support. It was affecting them to the point where they hated him that much. Yeah. Yeah, and while they couldn't kill him, they wanted to. According to Mosaic law, they thought they could because they got him on the charge of blasphemy. Well, so they thought, because he claimed to be the Son of God, so they saw that as blasphemy. But that was not a charge that the Romans could kill him on, so they figured out another charge. But what I think is, before we get into the story, what I think is quite remarkable about this story is how many Jewish laws they broke in the process of this trial.
Yeah.
Is that anything you got in your notes?
No, but I did know that.
Yeah. They weren't supposed to do a trial at night.
No.
Which they did. All the witnesses were supposed to agree, which they didn't. So yes, they didn't care. They were just on a mission, and they were prepared to break rules left, right, and centre to get their mission across because they believed they were doing the greater good. Somehow they deceived themselves.
Protecting God's temple.
Or they were protecting themselves, really, is what they were doing. But yeah, that's right.
Or protecting the status quo.
Yes, that's right.
They didn't want to upset the Romans to come in and,
And you got to realise these religious elites, these ones here, these are not necessarily the Pharisees. The Pharisees are more like the commoners in the sense of they were out with the common people. This is the ruling establishment. The Sadducees are the priestly families. These guys are the rich and wealthy and extremely powerful. these guys are completely in cohorts with Rome, and they are getting kickbacks. So they want to maintain the peace because it lines their back pocket and their comfort. So they don't want to get the Romans coming and getting so fed up that they lose their privileges.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind as we read and think about these stories. That's a big part of why this cream of the crop, the high priestly families, were so anti-Jesus, because they were afraid that it was going to lead to a rebellion. That's why they rebuked Jesus on the Palm Sunday. They rebuked him when he came in, because they were worried that he was going to start a riot, which would then cause them to lose their privileged position. Yeah. So honestly, it was about saving their backside more than anything else.
Of course.
Yeah. Which we should think about. Where do we do that? Where do we try to save face? Where do we try to keep ourselves comfortable? Where will we cut ends and compromise in order to get our way or have our privileges? Because we can be guilty of that too.
Oh, well and truly.
Yeah.
Do it probably every day that we subconsciously.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't even think it was always deliberate. That somehow these guys had just corrupted their hearts so much. They probably hadn't even realized how wicked they were. They thought they were doing the right thing. Proverbs says there is a way that seems right to a man that in the end leads to destruction. Yeah. Eve saw the fruit and it looked good in her own eyes. All the way through this narrative, it looks good. It's what I want in my own eyes. Jesus says, if you think your eye is light and it's actually darkness, how dark is that really? Yeah. How great is that darkness? So we can all fall into the trap of thinking something is good when it's actually bad. Yeah. And that's why we need accountability. That's why we need constant reflection. That's why we need to be constantly, Paul says, examining ourselves to make sure we're in the faith. If we're not, we could find ourselves like a Sadducee. And we could end up rejecting Jesus, thinking we're doing the right thing, rejecting Jesus. None of us are exempt from that.
So, yeah. So
anyway, I've said enough. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, definitely got to be careful of that one. But what I was actually more of a question to come back to you to answer is sometimes Jesus, or I noticed that when the religious leaders basically asked Jesus, like, tell us who you are, times it says that Jesus remained silent. But to the Romans, he would answer questions. But to religious leaders, I would often say that he remained silent. Why didn't he answer their questions? Occasionally he did. He sort of said, like, when they sort of charged him and said, are you the Messiah?
Yes.
But other times where it's like, hey, just defend yourself.
Yeah, good point. Don't think I've ever thought about it.
Okay.
I think it does say that Jesus remains silent to fulfill prophecy.
Yep.
So it says, as a lamb before a shearer is silent. So Isaiah 53,
yes.
Is it? Yeah. So he didn't open his mouth. So there's a prophetic fulfillment there of the suffering servant, the famous Isaiah 53 suffering servant. Jesus is acting this out, saying he didn't open his mouth, just like a lamb that goes to the slaughter.
The Passover lamb.
Exactly, the Passover lamb. In all ancient sacrifices, the animal had to be seen to be willing to die. If it stumbled along the way, this isn't just Jewish practice, this is pagan practice. If the animal stumbled along the way, it would be seen as a bad omen, and the whole sacrifice would be off. Which is like places like Delphi in Greece, like people would line up for months to go there and they'd offer the sacrifice. And if the sacrifice stumbled, that's it, right? Okay, all prophecies are off for the day, you know? Yep. So it was a big deal. And so I think that's probably Jesus acting out and fulfilling that and going, I'm going to keep quiet. Maybe that doesn't necessarily explain why he engaged with the Romans, other than maybe the way he's dealing with the Romans is somewhat different to the way he's dealing with Pilate is different to the way he's dealing with the Jews. I wonder if because it records quite a lengthy conversation with Pilate, doesn't it?
It does.
A back and forward. There's a few red letters there.
Yeah. Well, I have heard that it was like, okay, he stayed silent to fulfill prophecy, but also it was like probably along the lines of he'd already spoken to the religious leaders and, I'm going to say, called them to repent.
Yes.
And it was like, well, no, I can...
That fits.
You've
had your chance.
You've had your chance.
Actually,
I don't need
to waste.
I don't need to waste my time
So he says something like, all day I've been with you in the temple courts and you never, something like that?
You never arrested me.
Yes. Yeah, he says that.
So here's your final
In
judgment.
Gethsemane he says that, yes. So it's like, okay, you've had your chance, you've missed it.
Yeah.
Whereas Pilate, you're saying he hasn't had a chance to testify to Pilate. He doesn't say anything to Herod when he goes before Herod, mind you. Herod trying to get questions out of him. Wants him to do a miracle and all this stuff he's heard about him, and Jesus just doesn't. But that's probably just more Jesus going, I'm not going to be a party animal. Yeah. That's probably more, I'm not going to play your party tricks. He's just going to keep quiet. It's almost like he is denying Herod the joy of getting what Herod wanted.
Well, Herod had spoken to John numerous times. So
yes, that's right. He'd had the conversations.
So it's like, well, is your heart that hard that you've seared and you're not going to listen anymore?
And all Herod wanted was a miracle. Yeah. Which wanted you to do some party tricks for me. Yes, that fits. Yeah. And so with Pilate, it does seem like there's this conversation going on, which is genuinely an intellectual conversation where Pilate's trying to figure out who this man is.
Yeah. And it's like,
Jesus entertains that
I can
conversation.
release you. It's like, I've got that power to release you. And Jesus says, yes, you sort of do, but it's only because of God.
Yes.
The Father in heaven.
You wouldn't have that power if God hadn't given it to you.
Yeah. And Pilate, when Jesus was hung on the cross, he wrote the sign saying, basically, stick it back to the Jews,
this
saying
is the
this
King
is
of the Jews.
Jews.
Yes, that's right.
So there was that.
And he has the whole thing of anyone on the side of truth listens to me, he says to Pilate. And Pilate says, what is truth?
Yeah.
So, yes, you're right. That's as good an explanation as any, is that Jesus was willing to engage with Pilate because he wanted to be able to. Pilate hadn't heard any of this. It was all news to him.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to give him the opportunity to hear. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't really know what happened with Pilate. I mean, sometimes there was a story going on. There is a story that's gone around. I've heard it in church history that says Pilate became a believer because you kind of sense that he's wavering in the story. His wife comes to him and says, "Don't do anything with this man," but he's wavering and he's weak because he knows that. Well, ultimately, let's put it this way. Ultimately, he wants to release Jesus, and the way the Jews get him not to is to change the charge. Yeah. So the Jewish charge is blasphemy because he claimed to be God, but they know that won't work with Pilate. So they change the charge and go, this man claims to be a king. Yeah. Not a god, a king. Yes. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar, so that's treason. Yeah. Then they get him to crucify him on the charge of treason, essentially, even though Pilate still knows
I'm doing the wrong thing.
This isn't the right. This is nothing treasonous about this man. He even says, "My kingdom is not of this place." You know, you're a king. My kingdom is not of this place. If it were, my disciples would come and fight for me. He says to Pilate. So Pilate, to some degree, gets that this man's no threat to Caesar, but probably for fear of the riot and fear of word getting back to Caesar, that Pilate let someone go
who did claim to be a king. So
so he goes ahead and does it, even though he washes his hands and says, "I've got no part of this." Yeah. So there seems to be some kind of wavering in him, where ultimately he lets his fear get in the way, but he's wavering. But he was no sweetheart anyway, because Jesus references it early on. Pilate had sacrificed a whole bunch of people. There's a story that I think Josephus tells us about a riot in the temple courts where Pilate got all his soldiers to cover themselves and dress like Jews, put cloaks on, have all their swords under, and then and it might have been a previous Passover, I think, and then pull out swords and basically slaughter people in the temple courts, and then take their blood and mingle their blood into Roman sacrifices. So Pilate was no friend of the Jews. No. He wasn't this sweet, innocent little guy that you think of in this narrative. But maybe something happened later in life and he became a believer. We don't know. I think there's a story that says that he was ultimately banished somewhere else, maybe to England or something. He was put in, and being the governor of Judea was no promotion anyway. Yeah. You didn't go to Judea because you got a promotion. It was a backwater place that was always causing the Romans hassles. The Jews were always hassling them, so it wasn't a positive sign. But something happened. Maybe the Jewish thing happened. I don't know. Maybe the Jesus thing happened. Yeah. But I think from memory he ends up getting banished somewhere else, and he sort of moves into obscurity. But maybe Jesus' conversation had enough change on him that it led to something.
Who knows?
Who knows?
God does.
God knows, and we'll find out one day.
Yeah.
But you're right. Maybe is that why Jesus spoke to him? It makes more sense. It makes more sense than anybody else. There's no need for him to talk to Herod because Herod's not listening. There's no need for him to talk to the Jews because they're not listening.
No.
But there's something in Pilate, or at least Pilate would not be able to stand before the Lord one day and say, I didn't know.
No. Yeah.
Because he'd had a chance to engage with Jesus. Any other questions?
No, that was the main question.
Good
It's like,
question.
why did he stay silent?
Yeah, good question. I like it. Not one I'd thought of in that degree before, but that's a really good thought. Very good. All right. That's it for this week.
Yeah.
So we're back on Monday.
Yep.
Back again on Monday. We'll talk to you then, everybody.
Have a good week. End.
Weekend. See you, everyone.
Bye.